call to order the Pentucket Regional School Committee meeting, a business meeting of January 21st, 2020. Roll call, Wayne Adams, Joanna Blanchard, Bill Buell,
Here.
Emily Dwyer,
Here.
Maria Falzani,
Here.
Dick Hodges,
Here.
Lisa O'Connor, here, Chris Redding,
She's just coming in right now.
and Dina Trotter.
3.2.
Thank you. Let's see, I'm not going to have anybody rise to say the Pledge of Allegiance because we don't have a flag. So we need a motion to accept the agenda, however, we need to make an amendment to it. Under executive session, we have to amend that. It's not to discuss a property. It's for item number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body or the chair so declares. So can I have a motion to accept the agenda with that amendment?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
So
Chris?
Anna Beach just texted me that she's not going to be here tonight, so
Okay,
there won't be an official presentation of the check, but she'll get them to Greg.
okay, but we can still vote them, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so any other discussion? All in favor? Okay. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes from the Business, Finance, and Operations meeting of December 17th, 2019?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Can I please have a motion to accept the minutes from the business meeting of December 17th, 2019?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Can I please have a motion to accept the Business, Finance, and Operations Subcommittee meeting from January 7th, 2020?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Can I please have a motion to accept the minutes of the business meeting of January 7th, 2020?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. And then for subcommittee updates, Emily, teaching, learning, accountability?
I don't, but we're working on scheduling one.
Okay, thank
A
you.
meeting, not an update.
Bless you.
Marie, policy?
We'll go over some policies tonight and have another meeting next Tuesday, 9 to 12 in the green room.
So that's February 4th?
The 28th?
January.
28th?
Okay, week ahead,
Yeah, it's January 28th, Tuesday.
9 to noon. Okay, thank you. Dina's not here for communication, but I don't believe there was a subcommittee meeting. And Chris, business finance?
A budget.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is public comment. If anybody does take the microphone, we just ask to say who you are, what town you're from, and keep comments to about 3 to 5 minutes. Not seeing any. Thank you. Under superintendent news, Dr. B?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. Got to have, turn this over to Mr. Conway for a second. We're just going to talk about a partnership we're entering into with Harvard University.
And this relates directly to the 8th grade civics curriculum that was introduced to you last spring and has been implemented this year, and it carries on in through U.S. History 1 and 2 as well, so for our freshmen and sophomores. The Department of Ed had offered a competitive grant to districts and partners to apply for. Because of our initial work with the Democratic Knowledge Project, which is associated with Harvard, and it's the work that Mr. Kalasian came and presented to you last year. So we have applied for that grant through or with the Harvard Graduate School. And it's called Civic Engagement in Our Democracy, and it's meant as a partnership with Harvard. So hopefully that grant comes through, but we're committed to working with Harvard anyways throughout this, but that would provide us even greater access. So it's a lot of professional development for teachers at middle school and high school in the social studies departments, and then some student opportunities as well that get built into it. So it has a component where we'd be able to continue on even after the grant money hopefully comes through. through, but even after that. And the partnership with Harvard will be really an excellent opportunity for us to do it. So we're really looking forward to that. Project-based learning around civic engagement.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. So we also, just wanted to update you on the building projects. So I think I've mentioned before, I just want to, if I missed it at the last minute, I think I did. At one of the last building committee meetings, they did approve that the front of the school, where there would be the baseball field, will now be all turf for baseball and field hockey out in front. There's actually a savings to that by going from grass to turf, although there's a separate part to that. So that's the first piece. Second thing is that we are close enough now that, not last Thursday, a week and a half ago, there's a second part to we have a working group on Thursdays. So there's a construction meetings that are taking place with the construction manager beforehand. So it's exciting because it tells you we're shifting now from the conceptual phase, and now we're moving towards getting ready to build. And again, just as a reminder, we are on schedule. Everything's slated to be going right where we expected, and that groundbreaking going to be sometime early spring. So March, April, depending on Mother Nature. And we begin with phase 1, which is out in front. And that's just a couple months away, which is mind-boggling. And just the final piece of news, just to take this opportunity to mention, you're going to get your budget books later on. You can read certainly my cover letter. I did share that with faculty, staff, and employees this morning, but even this afternoon, we received an additional information that we have an additional student coming in that will cost another. So in addition to what you're reading in the book by myself and the narrative from Greg, an additional $100 what?
About 100 including transportation.
About $100,000. Again, unexpected, we can't budget for it, so it has to come from somewhere. And that has put us close to that tipping point where, in terms of whatever we purchase, but we are, at this point, looking at a likelihood of we're not spending freeze in the district. But I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. Again, there's no way for anyone to predict this. We can't do it, the state can't do it. People move in, that's the way that goes. Until the state steps it up, and hopefully in the governor's budget, when it's released, we do see some of that relief. And my final piece is to introduce, my second to final piece, because we're gonna get to that later, is to introduce Ms. Nader, who has with her several students. It looks like we're gonna get some information about what's going on in the arts department. So come on up.
Yes, on a day that students didn't have to come to school, we have 3 very dedicated theater students that were willing to come in tonight. We did have a couple students call in sick, and when I asked students earlier in the fall if they'd like to speak in front of the school committee, I had a lot of students that were really willing to do it, but then when they found out when it was, I had family vacations to contend with. But if you're interested, I can always forward statements that they've prepared, the ones that were out sick anyways, if you're interested. I'd like to thank you first for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Fine and Performing Arts Department. In the arts, Pentucket's secondary students are finding their voice. The intrinsic value of a high-quality arts education is powerful and a unique experience for each individual. The experience provides support and guidance in and outside of the rehearsal space and the studio space. We are fortunate to have dedicated, talented professional staff members to help guide our students. With their guidance, students become more articulate about their work, By regularly making choices, defending those choices, they learn how to plan by identifying the supports that are needed and the barriers that may stand in their way. They quite often begin this work well before they start creating or performing. So this is all in the planning stage. Throughout the creative process, students self-assess. They seek feedback from either their teachers, their peers, both, their parents, but seeking feedback for considering revisions. They experiment, they practice, and when they finally, the performance has completed or the artwork is done, they step back and they reflect. They reflect verbally and in writing to articulate and help inform their next steps as individual young artists and as an ensemble or a group. They do this all with the professional guidance of their instructors. The bottom line is Pentucket students in the arts work with intention. And in the exercise of working with intention over and over again, they become more proficient technically and academically, and they become more confident, engaged learners, making an impact on their futures. Through each accomplishment emerges a stronger voice that is a product of hard work and focus, that combines skill and knowledge to communicate unique and personal perspectives of the world around them. I want to thank the school committee and the Pentucket administration for your support over the years. I thought you might enjoy hearing some of the voices from our young artists and about the impact your support for our program has had on them. And before I sit down, as a side note, while it's public, I really have to thank some of the community organizations that have continuously and tirelessly worked to bring programming to our schools. Pentucket Arts Foundation, the Music Boosters, Kenny Fowler Foundation, and the Pentucket Education Foundation. Without their support, a lot of the things that we just can't budget for, our students wouldn't have those opportunities. And there are a lot of them, so I don't want to miss anything. So I am just going to say, overall, we have a lot of very supportive community volunteers that help us out, and we really appreciate it. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you some fabulous students that they are part of what makes Pentucket so special, and our department as well. So ladies, would you mind stepping up? You can introduce yourself, and then talk to them about your experience.
Okay, my name's Kelly Atwood. I'm from West Newbury, and I am a senior. And I have been in arts classes since middle school, and I'm the dance captain in our show right now.
Hi, my name is Paige DuBois. I'm from Merrimack, and I've also been involved in theater since 7th grade. I've been taking the classes and been doing the shows, and I'm actually the assistant director in this year's show.
Hello, my name is Bella Brancato. I am a junior and I'm from Groveland, and I've also been taking theater and visual arts classes since middle school, and in this current musical I am one of the leads. So from theater, we have learned many skills, one of them being leadership, and we are all choreographers for the shows. We have been since freshman year. And from these skills we've learned as choreographers, we've learned what it takes and the responsibility we need to be able to come up with and teach this choreography to a group of students who either have very little dance experience or just not comfortable in that element. So to be able to teach them and help them grow in that confidence and to have that responsibility on us, we are all very proud of being able to say that we can do that and apply these leadership skills and responsibility to other aspects of our life, including school, arts, and work.
Another great skill that we learn from theater is collaboration. So this takes place in the classroom, in the show, out of classroom, and it also helps a lot for the future. So in the classroom, most of our classes do revolve around collaboration. There are independent aspects in certain art classes, but especially in theater arts, there's a lot of collaboration that goes on, and you never know who you're going to be with, so that's a skill that really gets built on. Outside of class, collaboration, there's projects in almost every class at this school. It's really important to learn how to work together, and for the future, when you do have a job, or if you have one right now, it's really important to figure out how other people work, figure out how you work when you're with other people, and how that will work.
Another class that the art provides is public speaking, and in that class we learn articulation, projection, just to help us overall be more confident in the way that we talk to people and get our points across. And I think that's very important. And even in theater classes, not just public speaking, we learn, we play weird improv games that helps us get out of our shell and to be whoever we want to be on stage. And we use that when we're in the plays. We get to be whoever we want to be. And I think we can apply that in our own life when we do presentations in school, in every single class, every single week. Most people are terrified because they're scared of what other people will think, but we learn to just be ourselves and to take that confidence with us through college and through our life in the future.
We are very grateful for all the different arts programs and classes that Pentucket offers, because we know that not all districts offer all this wide variety of classes. And so to have the opportunity to learn new skills in the arts, theater, music every day is very special to us, because it's helped us grow as performers and people. Thank you.
A ninth grade student that emailed me today because she couldn't be here, so I'll read hers if you don't mind. I forgot to do that earlier. This is by Julia Spalding. She's in ninth grade. As an 8th grade student, art didn't fit in her schedule, so she joined my painting class, which is an upper, that's like probably 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. She really rose to the occasion. She kept up with the kids. She really worked hard and stayed focused. And apparently, I didn't realize until she wrote this that she was considering strongly going to Whittier or Essex. So the main reason why I stayed at Pentucket instead of going to Whittier or Essex is because of how large the art department here is, including fine arts, music, and theater, etc. I look forward to coming to school because I have classes in music and art every day. Developing a study for art has helped me see the world and the people around me in a new light. Now I am more accepting of new people and the ideas they share. I feel that because of art, my thought process and the way I see things have changed greatly. Artwork usually has a deeper meaning than what is explicitly shown. You can apply this to life and see that what people do has a deeper meaning to it. This idea has changed the way I see the world. So, I just want to share that. So, thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much.
We appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for coming in tonight on day off.
Yeah, not easy.
Thank you.
And for our last bit of news, we're going to go over to Mr. Ben Bolio.
So for my update tonight, I wanted to touch on the Education Foundation celebration, which is on January 11th, which is 2 Saturdays ago. The high school jazz combo performed with alum Catherine Heaton, and the Trailblazer Awards that were given out were Mr. Merrifield for the high school, Mr. Schumacher for the middle school, Ms. Earhart for the elementary school, Ms. Boucher for the elementary schools, and Mrs. Hitchcock for the elementary schools. Midterms of the high school start tomorrow, run through Monday. And the alternative learning day that is scheduled is for this Saturday, which will be discussed later in the meeting. And the community event on bullying awareness, there's one in the middle school on Monday, January 27th, in the middle school auditorium. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ben.
And I'd just like to thank Ben for mentioning that. That is the kickoff. Again, that's the partnership we have a collaboration with Triton, and that is the Mass Partnership for Youth that's going to be kicking that off. That is in the middle school auditorium next Monday evening. And there's a 6-part series is what this is going to be, and we hope there's a great turnout. It seems like we've got a lot of good coverage, and there's I think if there's not an article in the Globe, there'll be an article in the Globe sometime soon as well, so. We're really happy that got organized, and I know Mr. Conway did quite a bit of work on it, so I'd like to thank him for that as well. And that is what's going on in the district.
Thank you very much. And thank you again for coming in. It's exciting stuff. The next item is new business, and we have two donations from the Pentucket Education Foundation. The first one is for the Page School Chromebooks for the first grade team for $2,255.30. And the second donation is for the Donahue and Sweetser School for the STEAM Lab for $3,650 to be used towards the purchase of equipment for the STEAM Lab. So I need a motion to accept those two donations.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Now, Anna Marie couldn't be here tonight, but we're appreciative of the donations. The next item on the agenda is the budget delivery. Is that Greg? Are you gonna?
I'm up. Thank you. As promised at our last meeting, in front of you is the fiscal year 2021 budget book in its initial state. Looks no different than anything else I've produced in the last few years. Obviously, this wasn't the type of year to get innovative with all the school building project things and everything going on. So it's in its basic form that you're used to seeing. It's being presented to you right now at a deficit of about $609,000. And again, we're still waiting for some other information. I encourage you to look through it. Feel free to call me, ask me any questions that you see. Tomorrow, what you have in front of you will be distributed to our member communities, 4 copies to each town. And if I can find someone who's not sick, we'll get it up on the website.
Thank you, Greg.
But it's harder and harder to find someone who's not sick anymore. But that's where it stands right now. So the governor will be speaking tonight, and hopefully we'll get some better numbers tomorrow or Thursday.
He's starting at 7 tonight.
And we'll start the process of going through it and getting it back to a sum that we can submit to the town, so they'll get a chance to look forward to it as well. And once we see the net revenue spending numbers, I can call them in and see what they've got for money too. Well, we'll see how it goes.
Does anybody have any questions? Thank you very much for getting those books out to us. The next item on the agenda is the GAP program. Dr. B, would you like to discuss this?
Yes, please. So, in our previous conversations, we had wanted to find out insurance, what the insurance company would feel about students traveling abroad, we're generally covered. So here in your packet, you have an email that was sent to Greg. I just wanted to draw your attention. So the insurance agent here, interestingly enough, said in writing here, was pretty much what the exact same thing our attorney said. Now, I'm going to read this. So finally, this is in the third paragraph after the introduction. Finally, the issue becomes that is there coverage? The answer to this is always, which is bold and underlined, it depends. And then the second sentence, there is absolutely no way to consider all the possible scenarios that might give rise to injury. So you can replace injury with anything else, and that is what our attorney said. So in terms of GAP or any trip overseas, both the insurance company and our attorney, independent of one another, said, sure, we'll go ahead and we can do whatever coverage, but there's no way for us to say for certain that, yep, you're not liable and that's covered. It always comes down to, was someone negligent? And that's not different if it's a domestic field trip. If someone is negligent, we're liable, and they're liable. So that's just one bit more of information I wanted to share with you in regards to GAP, so that it's a full, everyone is aware of all the pieces that are taking place. I also asked Mr. Seymour, and he was able to find out that we have had over the last 2 summers, we have had 11 different students participating in overseas trips with outside of agencies. guidance counselor coordinates that as part of a stipend position, and there's been 11 different students who have partaken in that. So at this point, that's the level of interest. It's not organized as a Pentucket group altogether. It's counselors, when a student expresses interest, the counselor matches them up with groups that might be, groups that would be appropriate. And those groups, they're the ones who are outside in the school district. Just wanted to share that. And if you have any questions, please ask.
I think one of the things that came up back in September when we first discussed this was the language. Now, if you look at the DECA language in terms of behavior and what's appropriate and what's inappropriate, it's incredibly different than the GAP, which appears to be wide open. I mean, they even tell you how to dress appropriately as a business person, and they talk about what's inappropriate and what, and the consequences are really in two stages. Number one is quite severe. The second one is a little less severe, but if it happens more than once, it could jump to one, and we're sending you home, and your parents have to pick you up in Boston. I would love to see language like that in our handbooks, much less, but my concern for the GAP is still with the language. I thought it was very neutral, and if I had kids, I had 4 go through the system, but not a 1 based on that language that's there would go. Not 1.
Now, it's interesting also, just, I know we're going to get there, but DECA is a nationwide CTSO, Career Technical Student.
Oh, they got their act together.
Yeah, and that, what you read there applies, doesn't matter what state you're in. These are the rules that we abide by when you come to our
I loved it.
state competitions. And that also doesn't mean that language is something we could not include in what we have for GAP. It's just not going to be part of the GAP end of things for both the German students and for us. It would just pertain to our students.
So I'm unclear as to where we are right now with the GAP program.
Yeah, so last time, we wanted information about this, so I'm just sharing this out. The question had come up if we were going to extend the same opportunities to other groups. If we could have the attorneys draw up papers for, that way the cost kind of covers a bunch of different groups. The answer to that is yes. This is not on a vote right here, but I wanted to make sure I had everything gathered, so when it came to a vote, I could answer whatever questions you all may have. So I think that will come up in the very near.
Yeah, and so regarding, these trips that we're doing in the summer, my understanding is that those are really expensive. Do you have any feeling of what the dollar value is on those trips? I thought it was in the range of $7,000 to $10,000.
I don't know if they're that, so I think it's the lower end, I think might be more accurate, but I don't.
Well, just because, so that's why I'm more interested in a group trip here, like over, say, an April school vacation, as to what we've been offering for an overseas, because I think that those are pretty cost prohibitive from what I've been hearing, the way we're doing it, just like one person going out and doing something. So I'd like to see something extended to our entire student body. That could be, I know at one of the local schools, I believe it's Winnicott, I think they rotate through several countries every few years. So, it may be in a 4-year rotation where they'll do, I don't know what they do, but say it's like Greece, Italy, Spain, Germany.
Sure.
And so, if you wanted to, you could go all 4 years and go to 4 different locations, or you could just pick and choose which ones you wanted to go to. But I believe they hold it over a school vacation so the kids don't miss school. And when you're sending a group, that's a lot more economical than going as an individual student.
In GAP in particular, of course, there's that component too, where you're living with the family, so you're not paying for the hotel
Right.
meals. So it's much more affordable. But
Yeah, it's just that that's only an opportunity for our German
That's
students. And I'd like to see something, if we're gonna go this route, I'd like to see something that was opening it up to everybody.
Sure.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the superintendent's evaluation training. It's been scheduled for Monday, February 3rd, in the evening, at Is it 6:30? 6:30 PM at the Teachers Lounge in the middle school. So hopefully, everybody can make it, and it is the night before our next business meeting as well. The next item on the agenda is the Alternative Learning Day update. Dr. B?
Thank you again. So this is just to formalize that. We had this discussion earlier on in the year, and then we had that situation where the high school, middle school did not go. They're making that day up, but Saturday coming up. Last year, we were saying we're going for 3 alternative learning days. So in a way, we have had 1 alternative learning day for elementary schools and 2 for middle school and high school. What I'm asking is just if anybody has any issues with us saying, we're not going to, so if we had it at 3 because not all schools had it at 3, that we're not going to count that 1 for the middle school, high school against them as one of the 3. This is only up for discussion, but does anybody have any issues with that?
Can I make a? So I know we voted on the date for the high school one. And I'm thinking that a lot of feedback I'm hearing from people is to have it in the middle of midterms wasn't a good idea. So I'm hoping that if we get into a situation where it's not an actual snow day, alternative learning day, but if we have something similar to that, that we give better thought to when that makeup day gets placed. I don't know, I know already because we had professional development today, midterms are spilling to Monday, but now you got the Saturday, feedback I've been getting,
Oh, absolutely.
so.
Yeah. I think we had that discussion. I remember there was a lot, whichever Saturday we picked, there was a lot going on. I know we were trying to get it done.
And we wanted to keep it in the first term,
Right.
or in the first semester.
But to make it
the others,
work
so.
that is relevant to the
Mhm.
first term during midterms, with teachers already grading midterms. It's a lot both for students and for teachers.
And that's primarily the high school students.
The high school, yeah,
Elementary and middle still.
right,
No, middle school, sorry, doesn't have this.
right. Mhm.
Yes.
Any other discussion? Not seeing any. Next item on the agenda is the Educational Stability Review.
Sure. Just an update for everyone. Last year, we participated in the tiered focus monitoring. We, as a district, had multiple criteria. It's sort of what used to be a mid-cycle review. So every 6 or 7 years, the department does a review of policies surrounding special education, homeless, foster care, all sorts of things, not just policies, but also implementation of those policies. And I know last year as we began to do our policies here, several of them we had some specific components we needed to review, we needed to update. I wanted to give the committee a feedback. We received our report based on the Educational Stability Program Review. So that covers homeless policies, foster care policies, and military family policies, and the implementation of all of that. And we are 100% in compliance, and they are fully implemented. So that's a small portion, well, not a small portion, a good portion of the work, and then the rest of it we'll get more information on in the coming days. And the good thing is, because we're compliant, they don't look beyond Tier 1. If we weren't compliant, then they look into Tier 2 and Tier 3, so we're good.
Any questions? All right.
No, I just want to say thank you, because I know all 3 of those were new to us last year, and you had worked on those, and then Desi came back, and you had to do some more work on those, so I just wanted to say that I thank you for your time on that.
I appreciate the committee's time in effort to understanding the policies and the differences between them all. Some of the things we had to submit were actually things we had to present to you. It wasn't just a policy. We had to train the committee as well on homelessness and foster care. And I'm sure you all remember that training. I'm sure it was compelling to all of you. But so that's all part of it and part of the work that we do. So thank you.
Any other discussion? Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is policies. We have a large amount of policies to push through. The policy committee's been very busy. I'd like to thank Marie and Dick for working on these. The first policy is BEDE, remote participation in voting, and this is a new policy that's created for Pentucket. This is gonna be the first reading. So can I have a motion to accept?
Move BEDE, remote participation in voting.
Second.
Any discussion? Not seeing any, all in favor? Thank you. The next policy is IHBB, gifted and talented education.
Move IHBB, gifted and talented education.
Second,
Second.
any discussion? Okay.
So I had put in the notes that this needed discussion because we have a policy on this, but we don't currently have a gifted and talented education program. So the question had arisen in subcommittee. Do we delete the policy? Do we look into this further? So we wanted to bring it to the committee for discussion on that. Because it is one of our current policies
Okay,
for something we don't do.
okay. So Chris?
Well, so I think some history on that is, like, back when I taught in the district, so late 90s, there actually was a gifted and talented program. When this came up for review in 2013, I remember having a very lengthy discussion about the fact that we don't offer it, so I agree with your comments with regard to that, that if we don't right now have something that's called that or that resembles that. Your note here saying that the honors level, was it here or the next one? I forget. I don't know that even an honors level gets you to gifted and talented. So, you know, I feel the same way. I probably voted against this way back in 2013 because I said if we don't have it, why do we have this policy? It makes it look like there's something that we offer that we're not either capable of offering or don't have the time or resource, whatever the reason is.
So, can I say?
Yeah.
So that was something that came up in the subcommittee. Not honors doesn't supplant it by any stretch of the imagination, but if it is a matter of resources, which we didn't know, that's something we were bringing into question tonight. But if it was a matter of resources, something would like to have something that offers a challenge to students who need a challenge.
Yep. No, I
That
agree.
was what the discussion was.
Is there anything encouraging down the road that would allow us to maintain this policy? Whether it's this year, next year, 2 years from now? I realize that some of this has to be a budget issue, but,
There's also a philosophical approach on this as well. So whether it's a GATE, which is gifted and talented education, or AIG, which is academically and intellectually gifted, my question is always going to be, how do you identify those children? Every parent loves their child. And historically, when you roll out programs such as these, your gifted program does not go to necessarily people with Albert Einstein abilities. It goes to children who have parents of means, and so your underrepresented population does not have access. Your low SES group does not have access. So it not necessarily is tapping the whole population, it's tapping a certain part of the population. And the other part of that is, within a classroom, this has been attempted to be addressed by differentiation, where students are supposed to be challenged at their level. That's what we're supposed to do. And I think in some school districts, some classrooms might do it better than others, but that is another key component. When you start to establish criteria, that's very necessary. I know some parents are trying to get their kids identified in first and second grade, and we know developmentally that's just not appropriate. A lot of states, if they have an AIG, if they have an AIG program, the earliest you can be identified is in third grade. So if we decide to go down this route, I would just caution us that we need to be extraordinarily careful how selection is done and making sure it's all inclusive. And it's not a individual who complains that my child's bored, that's why they're getting in trouble, or my child's not challenged enough, or my child's really smart, because the pushing, they automatically go into this program. Budgetarily, yes, of course, it's going to be a budget issue, because you're talking about a whole separate program. students who would be pulled out. I think it used to be called, it was PACE at one point. Pentucket acronym, like whatever, it was a long time ago, and then that transformed into something else in the middle school. By the time you get to high school, it goes away because students end up taking those honors, AP, and we have accelerated classes. I think that's why, I'm guessing why some of the notes are in there about adding honors classes back into the middle school. So that's just kind of that other perspective on these types of programs.
The research that I've done, I actually took a graduate course on this. Only 1 to 3% of your population generally has this label anyways. But I'm thinking about students in our district that are not being challenged. And what are we doing about that? Because I've heard that comment come from parents. I've heard it from citizens. In fact, in some cases, those kids that are really, really very astute turn out to be tutors for the kids that are not getting it that first, second, and third time. They need some assistance. So what I'm seeing is we've got kids out on the runway. I want to get them in the air if they're on the runway. Now, if they're still in the hangar, then we've got work to do to get them out to the runway. But the ones that are on the runway and ready to go, I'm not sure all of them are going to go.
Emily, you had your hand up, and then Chris.
So, I have so many comments, I'm struggling to organize them. I philosophically don't think that this is in line with not only what I believe, but like what the current best practices in education are. I think that's why when we look at curriculum, we look at things that are differentiable, and that are able to meet the needs of a wide range of learners, and why we work so hard here to maintain a budget that allows these guys to do what they do and all the other teacher leaders to help support the people in the classrooms with these kids every day. Because to your point, like, this is gifted, truly gifted, like, more than 2 standard deviations above the norm gifted, requires not only the resources of testing those kids to determine in, using whatever measure, but, all of the pieces that Dr. B brought up as well around, and that Dick mentioned, this isn't for kids who might be bored or might not be getting their needs met for some other reason. This is, to me, something really different, and not where, like I said, best practices generally are going. That being said, perhaps some of the stuff that's happening at middle school, I know that at high school they have AP and honors and accelerated, those kinds of options. Middle school, I'm not there yet with my kids, so I haven't gone through it, but I thought that we did have some honors options for some of the kids at the middle school level. So if that isn't happening for whatever reason, to me that's almost like a separate issue. But I'm not in favor of a program like this, so I therefore don't really see the need for a policy for it. If we have other differentiation issues or meeting kids' needs issues, to me, a program like this is not the way to solve it.
Would you like me to withdraw my motion?
I am not
based
telling you
exactly
what to
on-
do. I don't mean that in a rude way. Like, I would not presume to tell you to do that. It's just not what
I'm happy to clarify a few
Does
things.
that
I
make
know
sense?
Ms. Redding also had her hand raised prior, so. but I don't-
Chris, do you want to ask a question, then you guys can answer everybody's questions? Would that work for
Well,
you?
mine's, comment. So it's interesting that in some subject matters, I think we do kind of have something for kids. So like Marcia just said, I know the student who was in 8th grade and she was in a high school class because she was at that ability level to do that. I know a few years ago there was a percussionist who got driven by his parents, I assume, over to the middle school and the high school to practice with the because he was at that level ability-wise. I know that, in some cases, sports med, like they're allowing some kids, if they have an affinity for that, they can take. So there's certain areas, I think it's more in our academic areas that we're talking about, and I think that I truly think that we should have the philosophy of Pentucket should challenge everybody to the best of their ability. If a student is sitting there not having to do homework because the homework gets done in class, not having to study for tests because they can get an A+, and I personally know somebody who is that way, at no point does somebody say to them, maybe you should be in ninth grade geometry instead of 8th grade. Like, things like that. Like, I think those are the areas that, and maybe it's because we've only just recently gotten a really great curriculum to go through for math and maybe reading, or, you know, I think there's some really gifted writers in the middle school who probably aren't challenged, and I'm not blaming the teachers, but, so I think that's where some of that flexibility that we can look at some of these electives and say, how can we make those things possible for these other kids to get beyond where we're at teaching them right now?
So I'd like to just differentiate two different things right now. So there's the gifted program, right? You said it's about 3% of the population, 3 to 6%, whatever it may be, versus being highly proficient. So I think what you're talking about is when if a student accelerates, and even when I was in school, that was not out of the norm. We had students that were in elementary school grade behind because they could do math at such a high level, were up in our classroom. You could take that for what it is. I mean, they were just incredibly talented, and they were really good. And that, to me, is appropriate. The public system, the American public education system, is built on chronological age, not based on ability. So I think if there's someone that was, the teacher is differentiated in their classroom in meeting the needs of all the students. This child is way above and beyond, and then yes, that to me is absolutely proper to do an acceleration for that child.
But I don't think that's happening.
Sure, I wouldn't be surprised if it is or is, because it's an abnormal, atypical situation. I'm not sure how we've dealt with them in the past.
1 to 3.
And again, I think establishing criteria where I think that's always going to be really important.
Marie?
Do we know, is there an established criteria that other districts that the state specifies for gifted programs? And then secondly, I mean, we say, well, it's only 1 to 3%, but then we owe it to that 1 to 3%, I would argue. Like, I'm torn. I've had one parent approach me on this, and it really, it bothered them that, like, their child just isn't, and she's like, I at least like to have the opportunity to, you know, to look into this. And I mean, if we had one child who had a deficit, a need, we would go above and beyond to fill that. So why not, on the other end of the spectrum, fill that need also, I guess, is my question.
I think in practice, and I'm not going to speak for Mr. Conley, but in practice, we've always looked at it and said, the student already knows the content. Okay, let's give them the assessment.
Yeah.
Whatever their final is, give it to them now, and if they already know it, boom, okay, they've taken it,
Right.
let's move them on to the next level. That's more challenging to do in elementary school than it is in middle and high school. We know in middle and high school, we did recently set criteria for math, right? And that's based on scores. And that 3%, yeah, I mean, no one's going to disagree with that. We definitely do. If we create a program that's column GATE or column AIG, it will not be 3%. It will be 15% of our students will be participating in that. Because my child doesn't test well, but they're really bored in class, or once you are labeled, you're always, like, that doesn't come off. And it could be developmentally, you learned early on how to deal with logical reasoning, and so you were way ahead, but then as the years went on, people caught up to you because you were labeled early on, all of a sudden you have access to all these services that you're doing well along with the rest of your peers, just that you had that label early. So I think we can be clever about how we look at this, and how we arrange it, and how just mechanisms we use to identify those types of situations, and tools to give each building administrator and their counselors ways to support those children. It's definitely possible.
Any other questions? So,
So I can address a couple things that I think came up. So to Mr. Hodges' point, nationally, 1 to 3% of people identified as gifted. That's a pretty accurate number, consistent with what I know. I can tell you, after working in a previous district that went down this road of not necessarily developing a program, but first saying, let's identify how many students are gifted. And 1 to 3% was the number, thinking, well, maybe it'll get up to 5%, and used criteria and assessments that were recommended by experts in the field, used nationally, and we ended up with 23% of the students gifted, which, I don't know if there's something in the water that was miraculous, but, you know, and then that could, well, if that's the case, then that's not really deserving of a separate program. That really should all just be embedded in with what we do, right? You're 100% correct. If there are 1 to 3% of students here, we should be doing something about it. I don't disagree with that for a moment. I don't, most of the people at the table would. Massachusetts is a little different than a lot. There are many other states who do have a policy, a state policy around gifted education. And in some states, it's actually embedded in their same state laws and rules as special education. And those students are treated through the special education lens. But it typically is more limited to the 1 to 3%, not the 23% that would be found here. But Massachusetts specifically has never done that and has not done it on purpose, even despite a lot of pressure from a lot of organizations and groups. And I think they have a lot of good reasons why, and I think many of them speak to what Ms. Dwyer sort of spoke to about a philosophical belief, a lot of what Dr. Bartholomew was speaking to, and that the way our educational system is set up here in Massachusetts, it's around differentiating the instruction. It's around finding opportunities within the curriculum to either give choice and opportunities that way, or a lot of what we are already doing here in Pentucket. Beyond that, we have a 7 to 12 setup here that is prime for condensing curriculum, compacting it, accelerating students, even in academic areas. The work we're currently doing around common assessments at the secondary level, and it extends to the elementary level, gives great opportunity for our faculty and staff to identify those students who have demonstrated competency well before we may expect the vast majority of their peers who need the instruction in order to get there. Our global language teachers, for instance, are in a complete revamp of their entire process of how they teach and evaluate students. And they are using the ACTFL, which is the Foreign Language Association's competency-based measures. So much so that they could use an entirely different report card than what we do, because it is all about demonstrating proficiency and competency for speaking and listening and reading and writing. And they presented to their colleagues on Friday during our early release day about all of the work they were doing, and it was really quite impressive the jumps they've made. I don't know that we've seen it yet be able to transform quite into the classroom, but the direction they're heading and what they've done is really very impressive in a short period of time. We will see a lot more of it come springtime. But that's a perfect example where if a student, after language of 7th and 8th grade, is really ready for a level 3 language, they should be able to go into that language, no matter what grade they're in. We made those changes with math last year, and we set criteria forward. It's not a gifted criteria, it's performance criteria versus giftedness. And in fact, most of those gifted students that you reference, 1 to 3%, often actually don't perform very well at all. That their traditional methods of which we would assess students don't get at their level of giftedness. And so we did that math, and we have a compacted curriculum for about 20 to 25% of our 7th graders, and they're participating in that. And those students have an opportunity to get on a pathway, and it's all based on demonstrating competencies, so programming and pathways. And we are doing that here in Pentucket. Started that work before Dr. Bartholomew and myself were here, but I think we see a lot of opportunities to continue to do that, including building our partnerships for early college, which is, you know, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but we're going to come to you soon with that on our early college plan for a good number of our students who will have an opportunity to do that. So I think we embed that in to what the work we do. There are very few districts in Massachusetts who have a gifted and talented program, a specific program, because in order to do so, it requires you to identify students. And in order to identify them, it does take resources. And then as you're identifying them, you better have something you need to do with them. Sometimes there are small programs where kids can get a little enrichment if you're identifying kids who need that. But really, even our professional development today, all day, with a woman by the name of Erin Moore, who's a second grade teacher in Concord, New Hampshire. She works with Mike Anderson, who's a tremendous consultant, wrote a book that our teachers are doing as a book study, Learning to Choose, Choosing to Learn. And it was all about the power of choice. And within it is embedded competency-based learning, getting kids the opportunity to learn more about how they choose to engage with themselves and giving those opportunities to those students. And her message resonated from our kindergarten teachers all the way up to our teachers who teach AP level. And those are really the methods of how we as a district are prepared to do that. And asking them to tutor their peers is not the answer during class. Certainly if they want to do it after class, to give them an opportunity, that can be great too. But I think you're right. 1 to 3% of our students probably do need something. If you're hearing comments from parents or families to say, my kids aren't being challenged, I'm concerned about that, direct them to the principals, and if they're not satisfied with those answers, then they can come speak to one of us, and we're happy to address it. And a lot of times that's how we sort of get things moving a little bit too. So.
Okay, so do we have a motion on the table?
Can I, Lisa? Chris? So Ben is at the tail end of his education here at Pentucket. Do you have any thoughts on this matter? Either
I know
for you or your friends, or?
Yeah, I know a lot of people who could fall into that category. And every Tuesday in the library after school, there's tutoring for those gifted students to help other students who need it, especially around the midterm time. And I feel like that might be another outlet for them to kind of express their knowledge from that top percent of people to distribute it. That might be a different type of challenge for them to kind of express themselves. Yeah, to teach it. So I think that might be different and helpful from what I've heard from
And
those students.
who does that, do you know?
So that's the National Honor Society,
So what is that population?
probably the top 25.
No, I know, but it's like the second half of junior year on.
Yeah, so I think there's about 25, about 25 students in that.
So wondering if even somehow that can be opened up and not just be, because here, Honor Society doesn't happen till second semester of junior year, so your population is limited by your class year. I'm sure there are kids in 9th and 10th grade who have that ability.
For the tutoring or for the honor society?
For the tutoring. Well, Honor Society is a whole different thing.
Yeah.
In general, yeah.
I think that should be earlier too, but.
I think at any level, I agree, at any level, having a fifth grader work with a second grader on something is incredibly powerful. That peer-to-peer support is huge, so any opportunity, and it's only the National Honor Society does it, but.
And I'm wondering how different it
could
will
just
look.
be expanded.
with the-
Because
with
you
the
have
elementary
peer
levels.
tutors who go to the middle school now, and, maybe somehow that can go to academic stuff.
Perhaps we could take some of these ideas and discuss them at a subcommittee?
Yeah.
In terms of how we could support best, because it might not totally all be related to the policy.
Yeah. So we have a motion on the table. Can you reread that, Marianne?
There is a motion made by Mr. Hodges to approve the gifted and talented education policy, and second by Joanna.
Okay, so I think we need to vote on that, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Unless it's withdrawn.
Unless it's withdrawn.
Well, I know the ups and downs, because I've actually worked in a school that had, and we eventually got rid of it because of finance. It was an excellent program. But if we're not fully, as a committee, going to commit to this, I'll be more than happy to withdraw, because we either commit to this or we don't. So, and it doesn't sound like we're ready to fully commit to this language, so I guess it doesn't need to be here. But I'm also going to hold the administration to be very accountable for what Marie just talked about in terms of the person whose child is not, who's out on the runway and wants to get in the air and it's not happening. So promises have been made. Yeah.
If an administrator knows about it and isn't doing anything, teacher knows about it, isn't doing anything, that's a problem.
Okay,
Okay,
I'll withdraw.
okay, thank you.
So it stays on the books for now?
Yeah, that's what I'm
Or-
questioning.
We don't have it.
Or do we
So
need to
do
vote
we- New
to
motion.
get rid of it?
Can I move to remove IHBB from our policies
Second.
for now?
That sounds good.
All in favor of that motion? Okay. The next policy is
Sorry, 'cause I know you guys worked really hard.
IHBEA, English Learner Education.
Move IHBEA, English Learner Education.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Next policy is IHBG, homeschooling.
Move IHBG, homeschooling.
Second?
Any discussion? Chris?
So when this was changed, I believe,
I have the date if you want.
whenever it was changed, it was changed in part because history, the school committee used to approve homeschooling requests. We'd get a list, we'd see nothing beyond the list of names, well, maybe there were names, I don't remember. But we saw nothing, so at the time, we determined that this duty should be to the superintendent or the assistant superintendent, whoever it should be. So there's a couple times in here where it talks about, I think it's paragraph, third bullet, yep, factors to be considered by the superintendent or school committee. I don't think it should be school committee. Like, I think wherever it says, and I don't know if anywhere in here it says we give that, because I don't know if by law it's the school committee and then we can defer it to you.
It is, and even the first statement, Massachusetts general law requires school committee to determine that a homeschooling program be met.
Right.
In the end, you are
Right.
the ultimate authority of final approval
Right.
for when a student meets those final designations. You, by practice, and now in theory by policy, are delegating that responsibility to the superintendent or the assistant superintendent for that matter.
So do we need to say that in the policy, or do we? I don't think we say it anywhere.
I prefer to leave both in there, to have that option.
But we're not giving that responsibility to administration.
Well, the factors to be considered by the superintendent or school committee, you know. Is it the top or the line about the factors?
Well, I think what I'm saying is at the top, it's talking about the superintendent, down below, it's saying it's our responsibility too. So I think at some point we need to say, the Pentucket Regional School Committee gives that responsibility to administration, or I think somehow we have to say that. And then I think we have to, at the bottom, talk about who makes the final. Because if we're doing this, we don't see anything, you guys are giving diplomas to people, but we've never seen anything. So I think we have to figure out
Well, the last
where we
paragraph,
are.
oh, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
The last paragraph says, with the approval of the school committee, they may be awarded a high school diploma. But that's just not been happening, or?
You approve all diplomas for anyone graduating.
Right.
So,
But if it's a homeschooled student
Right.
getting a diploma, we've never seen anything because we've given that responsibility to you. So I think that needs to be made more clear in this policy, do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Okay, so we'll put it back to the policy.
Well, does it make sense to you what I'm,
Yeah, no, I understand what you're trying to say.
Okay.
or to
What
anybody
you
else?
So, do we move to table it?
Call it first reading.
Okay.
Okay, so you still have to vote on the motion, right, Mary?
Not if it was decided to go back, and this is the first reading,
Okay, so do we need to vote for that, or?
just withdraw the motion.
Do you want to withdraw?
Excuse me?
Going to withdraw the motion?
Yeah, I'll do that. We'll go back and tinker with the wording.
Point of order, Lisa. In our packet before that one, we had IHBE bilingual instruction. I don't know if,
No, that was the,
is that part
Replacement.
of
Okay, yes,
IHBEA?
it was, so
Replacing.
bilingual, that was the policy as it's written right now, if you look up a policy online, and it was replaced with the English learner
Oh,
education
okay.
policy of Mass. I'm
Okay.
sorry if that was.
Okay, I see that on the bottom, thank you. Okay, so policy is, well, actually, no, it's the homeschooling regulations. So we're gonna table this one as well,
Okay.
go along with the other one. Next policy is IJLA, library resources.
Move IJLA Library Resources.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Next policy is IJ, instructional materials.
Move IJ Instructional Materials.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Next policy is IJR, reconsideration of instructional resources.
IJ-R Reconsideration of Instructional Resources. I move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Next policy is IJJ, textbook selection and adoption.
Move IJJ Textbook Selection and Adoption.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
I was in favor, no questions.
Next policy is IJL, library materials selection and adoption.
Move IJL Library Materials Selection and Adoption.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the DECA out-of-state field trip. Dr. B?
Thank you again, Madam Chair. We,
It's not out of state though, right?
it's overnight.
Overnight.
Yes, that should be overnight. But, so our DECA team, we have a copy of their request for policy. The school committee needs to approve overnight field trips. DECA, of course, is a career technical student organization. We heard last year from Madison Estes, who told us about how the group was mostly freshmen. So this year, the group continues to gain steam and grow. And it is very common for school districts to have, high schools to have DECA groups. And as I mentioned to Mr. Hodges, DECA is very, doesn't matter what state you go to, because when you go to national competitions, it's all run the same way. So all the states run the same way. Typically, students spend 2 nights and 3 days, I believe, I think that's what this is. 2 nights and 3 days at state competition, where, because they are overnight, and DECA works with high school-aged children all the time, they have laid out their national rules, which all the schools are required to follow, and included in this packet. So it's just presented to you for your, to discuss, and I believe
To the participants in the DECA program, do they have any fundraising responsibilities?
yeah, so on their application, there is funds within the school that is going to be used to help support it. He said there was some budget funds, but they typically are responsible for doing fundraising to be able to go.
And how many students does this involve?
10.
10. Okay, thank you.
Emily?
I would just like to say, I am completely in favor of this. I think this is a fantastic organization and gives such amazing opportunities to kids, both in the local and then the national and the global competitions. And I'm so glad that we have this going at our high school now.
Amen.
I will
Yes,
make
so
note.
before we have any more discussion, do we have a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the DECA overnight state field trip.
Second.
Or the overnight
Okay,
field
now
trip.
any discussion?
Sorry. That's okay.
I have offered to be the second adult chaperone for the trip, so.
Oh, well,
Some
then,
tweets
that
about
might
it.
change my vote.
Poor kids.
I love everything I've read about the program, but I wasn't familiar with it beforehand. So if we could get them to come, like we've had
Oh, yeah.
other, that would be fantastic. I'd love to hear what they have to
So
say.
I will say, I would just say that it was very, so when we heard from Ms. Estes last year, I
Yeah.
was very encouraged that we were moving in the right direction. Because these are the exact types of opportunities that when we had principals show up and talk about this extracurricular, these are authentic tasks. Students have to design businesses, have to together presentations, it's all those skills that are so critically important. And we don't have a lot of CTSOs that we offer, but if this gets the ball rolling, that'd be
Okay, Emily?
So we've had a DECA team at the Manchester Essex High School for a while, and I have former students who have gone through this, and just to piggyback on what you said, it has given so many opportunities and motivations and sort of eye-opening to different paths that they might be able to take for so many different kinds of kids and learners that I feel like it's so valuable. And again, talking about the differentiation piece that we were just talking about, it allows for such a variety of kids to engage in ways that they may or may not otherwise. So I'm really
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of the field trip? Thank you. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is public comment, but there's nobody here. So we're going to enter into executive session, and we will not be coming back to the meeting.
You need a motion.
So moved?
Second,
All in favor?
Roll call.
A roll call, I'm sorry. Dick?
here,
Joanna?
yes.
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Evelyn?
Yes.
Maureen? Chris?
Yes.
Lucy, yes. Okay, thank you.
Ben, you can say no.
Is DECA an after-school activity, or is it
Just a reminder afterwards, Chris, next week.
Yes, I promise.
the business classes and stuff? Well, because some of the girls are on multiple varsity
if I-
sports, and I'm like, when do they meet for this? How do they do